In this scenario, I am the general contractor trying to build a high-scale restaurant. I have allocated and forecasted the resources, timeline, and budget. A couple notes to make about this scenario. If I do not meet my deadline by January 1st, 2014, I will face a $100,000 penalty. If I meet my deadline, I receive a $50,000 bonus. So there are incentives to keep a close eye on my timeline, and if I can do this, a huge return on investment. With the triple constraint solution, I can in real time show and understand what will happen if my resources, timeline, and or budget changes. On the screen, I can see easily my timeline and what each resource is doing. I can also drill down further into my resources to see how they are allocated. I can see who is underworked, overworked, and working on 100%. This allows me to see very quickly resources I can shift around, as well as if I will need additional resources to fill any gaps. I am able to see my budget per fiscal quarter, which I can define without any hassle. I can also quickly identify any budget changes due to resource and or timeline changes. For our example, keep an eye on quarter budgets and the total budget cost, as the timeline changes due to resource constraints. So let's say my electrician, Johnny Volt, informs me that he will have to start work 2 months later on the electrical project. The airflow project is dependent on the electrical project and will have a direct impact on my schedule. Let's input the data so I understand how this impacts my constraints. I can see in real time how my resource allocation is defining my schedule. And I see that I will not be able to finish the project on time, which means I will incur the penalty. So we need to look at our resources and see what options I have. I can see the direct impact of this timeline shift. My labor crew and electrician are now over allocated. I've also passed my deadline. Before we look at my options, I need to see the impact to my budget. I can quickly see the quarterly budgets have drastically changed. For example, Q2 was around 910,000, now around 530,000. Q3, which was around 526,000, now 882,000. Since the schedule has expanded, an additional quarter budget is also impacted. My total budget didn't really change, but I will incur the penalty of $100,000 and lose out on my $50,000 bonus. So I need to understand what my resource issues are, compile my options, and make a good business decision. There are two issues I need to address. The first is missing my deadline, and the second is solving the resource overallocation. First, I need to shift resources around so that work on the electrical project can be completed on time and not cause a delay. I see that my other electrician, Joe Smith, is underallocated starting in April. So I'll add him to the electrical project, even though his rates are higher, which is why he was underallocated. Doing this will allow me to finish the work at a slightly higher cost to meet my deadline and avoid a costly penalty. Let's input the data. I will move the work to Joe and then move my airflow project back on schedule since the necessary work can be completed. I can see my timeline is now back on schedule. Now let's check the allocation of my resources. I can see that my resources are more evenly allocated now and within my contracted timeline. This also solves the second issue with my over allocation of resources. Now let's look at the budget impacts. I can see in Q2 there is a $25,000 impact for making this resource switch. However, I've mitigated the resource risk, avoided my $100,000 penalty, and earned a $50,000 bonus. Overall, a good business decision. The triple constraint solution establishes relationships between the schedule, budget, and resources in a visual, relational, and quantificational format for modeling and real-time decision making by stakeholders.